What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Party on Broad. Our NFL draft coverage continues with a breakdown of the running back position in the 2023 NFL draft. To help me do that, the man, the myth, the legend, the GOAT. He is Mark Schofield of SB Nation. Give him a follow on Twitter at Mark Schofield. What's going on, Mark?
Crocky, what's going on, man? It's so nice that you're buttering me up because as we talked about before we hit record, we are on a collision course. Celtics, Sixers at some point in the next couple of weeks.
I know.
So we're going to be nice to each other until that series kicks off. Now, look, obviously the Sixers got to get past the Nets and the Celtics got to get past the Hawks. And, we can't look ahead too much. But let's be honest. There's a collision course in our future. That's going to be fun to talk about. But what's also going to be fun to talk about, this running back. I mean, I know we're living in the era of running backs are devalued and don't draft running backs early. And I understand sort of the, philosophical idea that because of the wear and tear of the position, because of the way that the passing game is canned, like maybe for some organizations, it might not make sense to draft a running back early. But for a team that A, has 2 first-round picks, and B, as we are recording this on April 17th, just made their quarterback the highest paid player in NFL history, maybe this is a team that would draft a running back early, i.e. the Philadelphia Eagles. So it's a fun position group. I'm excited to dive in.
Love it, man. All right, let's jump right. Well, if you're watching us now, April 17th, as we put this video out, we are a week and a half away from the NFL draft. We've covered every other position pretty much in this draft, so please go check that out. And it's so funny. Probably right after the NFL draft, that Boston-Philadelphia NBA playoff series will begin, and the nicety and the compliments go
all
out.
The nice things we say about each other just completely out the window.
Out.
And what I'm most worried about is Crocky's ahead of me on Mandalorian. And if I don't get caught up, when that series begins, he's going to spoil the entire season for me. I'm just terrified of that.
Dude, have you watched the latest episode?
I'm still one behind. And I needed to get that out there just on the off chance that because I know, we talked about this series. We talked about the season. We're both still obviously huge fans of it. I had to get that out there because I didn't want to get the spoiler because I know something huge happens in the episode. I just got done last week watching Lizzo, Jack Black, Chris Lloyd. Like, that was a fantastic episode. And It was nice. It was kind of warm and fuzzy and touchy. And I know that there's a shoe the size of, an SUV about to drop on my head. So,
yeah. The last episode last week was a banger. I'm not going to say anything.
No.
But yeah, we can talk about that after the show. Let's jump right in to your top 3 running backs in the draft, man.
Yeah, and look, I'm very chalky. I know your top 3. We have the same 3 names, but in a different order because yours is more ego specific, which I totally get and I would agree with. Robinson 1. I mean, Bijan he does everything. And what I love about him, look, you can see the footwork, you can see the vision, you can see the scheme diversity, you can see what he does in the passing game, right? You can put him in the slot. When he gets drafted, whenever he gets drafted, you're going to see the catch on the post route against Iowa State where he goes up to get it, and people are going to say, that's why you draft a running back because of what he do in the passing game. But my favorite thing about him, and he said this at the Combine, and I was standing in the back because I got to his podium late. I was writing a piece about Peter Skoronski, the Northwestern offensive lineman, because he had done his session earlier in the day. But I caught the end of Robinson's podium session, and 2 things really stood out to me, Crocky. One was what he said, because people were saying, do you think you're a 3-down back? He's like, no, I don't. I'm a 4-down back. Because 3rd and long, you can carry me in the passing game. I can run routes out of the backfield. But 4th and inches, I'm going to get you that inch. I'm going to get you that yard. You could run me between the A gaps. You could run me between the tackles. And I thought, that was an absolutely perfect answer to that. And I love the sort of way he sort of describes his game. But the other thing he said, which I absolutely love, people asked him, what do you listen to before games? And you know what he said?
What?
This blew my mind. Nature sounds. He's like, I am so amped up to play to begin with. I don't need to listen to music. I don't need to listen to something to get me going. I listen to wildlife sounds, I listen to nature sounds, and I'm like, all right, man, give me the guy that's so ready to go. He almost has to calm himself down. So for me, Robinson is one. I've got Gibbs too. And I understand you've got him 3, and you've got the guy I got 3 at 2, and that's fine. I think Gibbs is in some senses, Robinson light, particularly what he could do outside the tackles, what he could do on the edges, what he could do in the pass game. I've seen a lot of Gibbs at 31, and I can understand why. For many, he's consensus RB2, and if Robinson is off the board, if the Eagles don't pick him at 10 and Robinson comes off the board with 31, I get why people might do the Gibbs thing. Patience, vision. His touchdown run against Auburn in the fourth quarter I thought was fantastic. You saw the patience, you saw the vision, you saw the burn. He had a counter run against Kansas State. Footwork, vision, multiple cuts in the backfield. He had a route from the slot against Kansas State, a two-way go option route. Looked almost like Alvin Kamara in a sense on that play. So that's why I like Gibbs. Robert my 3. And I know why he's your 2, a sort of ego-specific 2. That makes a lot of sense. He's more of your traditional sort of power back, upright running style. But then you see little glimpses of patience, glimpses of burst, glimpses of footwork and athleticism. He had a 15-yard run against Arizona, multiple cuts. There was a late dive-in tackle attempt at his ankles where he sort of tiptoed around it. I'm like, for a guy with that size, that power, that upright running style, to have that kind of footwork, really sort of impressive to me. So it's a chalky 1, 2, 3, but they're a chalky 1, 2, 3 for a reason. They're 3 very talented backs.
Where do you think Bijan Robinson falls in the first round? I think he's pretty much a lock for the first round, but on a lot of different draft boards, I've seen him as high as top 5, top 10. Then I've seen him at the back end of round 1. Do you?
It's hard. It's hard, Crocky, because I think one of the hardest parts of doing mock drafts this year, and again, that sounds silly, right? A hard thing is to a mock draft. I mean, as an aside, I'm speaking at my daughter's career day in elementary school later this week. And believe it or not, there's, I think, a paleontologist, a zoologist. There's somebody and this one blew my mind. And this is the point where I'm like waving the white towel. There's literally somebody who's speaking at career day that's an NFL ref / aeronautic engineer. Like he's a literal rocket scientist / NFL referee. And then there's me. And so again, it's like, hey kids, do you know what a mock draft is? Because that's what I get to do. So, I mean, how do you make that look hard and impressive, especially against the group that I'm going to be speaking with? So,
hilarious.
Jokes about mock drafts aside, one of the hardest things to do is where do you slot Robinson in? And I think part of that is why you see him at 10 in mock drafts, just because it's like, okay, the Eagles, they might have a need at running back. They got 2 picks. We'll just do it at 10 because he's a first-round talent. He's a top first-round talent. But because of the way the position is viewed, and because, frankly, I don't know if Howie would do it at 10, just because of, again, the way the position is viewed. If he gets past 10, I know Washington at 16 has become sort of a trendy spot for him, but I think Washington goes corner or offensive line. Tampa Bay at 19. I've seen some betting odds where that could be a spot, but it's like, that's playing the violin on the Titanic. The ship's going down anyway. By the time you build around him, you're going to probably got to the end of his first round rookie window. So that doesn't make sense to me. Detroit at 18 might make some sense. The one that fascinates me, and I've done this a couple of times, is Dallas.
Yes.
Just because, I mean, partly because it's Jerry, right? And Jerry drafted the Texas running back. It just seems like an absolute Jerry move. It wouldn't make sense on the field. Probably not too much. I mean, you just moved on from a guy you drafted at the top of the first round, and you're going to replace it with another first-round running back. I mean, that's just a Cowboys move. But I've done that in mocks too. And so it's hard to slot him in. Like, if this is 2001, he's going in the top 5 of the draft.
I fully agree.
Without question. In 2023, I don't think he slides out of the first round, but he might be waiting a while.
Yeah. I mean, he's definitely the best running back prospect since Saquon Barkley.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any doubt. But it's funny you mentioned the Cowboys because we did a first round mock for BGN like a week ago, and I had the Cowboys, and I was on the clock, and I was like going, just shameless plug, like pretending I was Jerry, running to the podium and drafting Bijan Robinson.
Yeah, and I can totally see it. And I watched that, by the way. You guys did a fantastic job with that.
Thanks.
But I could see Jerry doing it. Mike Tanier, who I love, does great work for Football Outsiders New York Times, had dinner with him one of the nights out in Indianapolis, and he went through the bet and odds and on Robinson right now. And it was basically like, it makes absolutely no football sense, but it's Jerry. So there you go. That's the sort of pitch for Dallas there.
All right. Let's roll on to the running back prospect with the most upside in the draft. Who's your guy?
There's a lot of names to pick here. Honestly, there really are. But somebody that's really stood out to me watching him on film the entire process, Tyjae Spears from Tulane. And yeah, I just, the potential there. I've seen sort of people all over the place on it, but somebody that whose opinion I really sort of value when it comes to the running back position is my buddy Matt Waldman. He does such a great job looking at running backs, and he's a big fan of Spears. Basically talked about him like one of his favorite players, like looks at him and sees the potential upside. And I watch him against USC. I mean, that's a game I probably spent the most time on. And there are some runs where it's just like he's shot out of a cannon. Like he had a 47-yard run in that game where it's like boom, explosiveness, 0 to 60 in 4.3 seconds, to use an automobile analogy. But he had a 62-yard run in that game where you see vision, you see contact balance, you see patience. A 60-yard touchdown run against UCF, another sort of contact balance play. And I'm a real big fan of contact balance at the running back position. You're going to get knocked around, bounce around. He's got that, and he's got a ton of it. And so I look at him, and it might be dependent on landing spot, situation, and what's around him. But in the right environment, he could go off in the NFL.
Yeah, he's my number 4 running back in the class, and I love his upside as a receiver as well. One of the guys that I really didn't know much about when I was like being that degenerate nerd watching the Senior Bowl, and he really stood out. Like he was incredible. So Tyjae Spears, man, out of Tulane, that's awesome.
Yeah,
one of my favorites. Let's roll on to the most underrated running back prospect in the draft.
Most underrated. This is tough because, we talked about some names like Roschon Johnson from Texas could be a pick here, just because on almost any other campus in the country, he's RB1 and he's getting the bulk of work. It's just, look what he's hitting behind. I mean, but my pick here, it's a guy that I've loved throughout his collegiate career. He had a bad injury, which knocked him out a year ago. Mohamed Ibrahim from Minnesota. I've been a big fan of his game, watching him over the years. 43 broken tackles this past season, second most at FBS, more than Robinson, believe it or not. 1,003 yards after contact this year, third most at FBS, just 3 behind Robinson, so stands out there. You watch his game against Iowa, can dip around some, he had a run where he sort of dipped around edge pressure, which showed a little bit of burst, showed that he had the lower body back, the explosiveness. He had a run against Rutgers where he's getting skitty through the hole. I think he's perhaps more of a throwback type of running back, but I really like him. And he's somebody that I think should be getting more attention. Right now, I'm seeing him like round 4 in mock drafts. I think consensus mock draft right now has him at like pick 159. Kind of surprises me. I think he's got a lot more to offer there.
Love it, love it, love it. And then last but not least, the day 3 running back prospect that you think isn't being talked about enough.
There's a couple of names that I want to throw in here. Dwayne McBride from UAB. I think he's a really talented player. 39 broken tackles last season, according to Sports Info Solutions, which was 4th in FBS. 33 missed tackles, which was 6th. Watch him against Louisiana Tech, for example. That's a perfect game to sort of study him. Multiple plays in that game where he stopped behind the line or at the line of scrimmage, and he's just running through, some admittedly poor tackle attempts, but you see the broken tackles, the missed tackles, the yardage after contact. So I'm a fan of his game. Chase Brown from Illinois, really like him. Obviously a powerful type player, and a name that I think now that he's finally cleared, he's had a weird final season. Because this is kid that I want to talk about that was in the first round of mock drafts last year. There was an idea he might be RB2, RB3. Didn't come together for him this year, and he had a really odd post-season pre-draft process with some injuries. But Sean Tucker from Syracuse, he's finally cleared. He's going to have a sort of individual pro day. Like, he's round 6, round 7 right now in terms of consensus mock drafts. It wouldn't surprise me if a week and a half from now, he's pushed himself up into the early day 3. Maybe he comes off the board day 2, but he's somebody that I think as we get closer to the draft and finally has that individual pro day is going to sort of make some noise as we get closer to the real thing.
Yeah, another guy that like kind of has really fallen off a cliff, especially these last 2 months, is out of Georgia, Kenny McIntosh. He's a guy that, you know, replacing Zamir White, replacing James Cook, really did a pretty decent job in 2022, but like the draft process really hurt him, man. I was expecting this guy to run like in the 4.4s. He ran a 4.62. He's got some ball security issues. He doesn't offer much in pass protection. He's one of those guys that like I loved during 2022, but the more I looked into him, the more I kind of picking apart. That's the problem with this process.
Right. And that's why the draft has to happen at the end of March, early April, right? Because we're now in that stretch of the draft where we are overthinking everybody. Like, we're overthinking Jalen Carter. We're overthinking Will Anderson. We're overthinking Christian Gonzalez. We're overthinking everybody at the top of the draft board. We're talking ourselves into the idea that Hendon Hooker is going to come off the board before, you know, Stroud, before Richardson. Like, we need one less month of draft time. But the problem is, if we do that, like we'd be yelling about Caleb Williams and Michael Penix Jr. and Drake May now. And so it's a double-edged sword. Yes, the draft needs to get here, but the sooner the draft gets here, the sooner we start yelling about next year, because we can't help ourselves. Like you said, Crocky, we're all degenerates, right? Like, as soon as this draft ends, let's be honest, I will probably have a mock draft out the Monday morning after this one. I mean, that's just the way the game works.
I'm probably going to take a couple weeks off.
Because we're going to start yelling about Sixers Celtics. I mean,
exactly. No question. I'm a big fan of Caleb Williams, man. That guy is electric.
He is so good. I mean, he is so good. And if he has the kind of year that people are expecting, the hype train is going to be just rolling out of the station come October.
Yeah. Real quick on another guy that kind of has been overshadowed, that has, you know, some interesting upside, is Zach Evans out of TCU. He's been literally overshadowed by Quinshawn Judkins, I think is his name.
Yep.
He was a freshman, a true freshman, and arguably the best running back in the country, not named Bijan Robinson last year. But Evans has solid breakaway speed. He's a guy that can, you know, make defenders miss. He doesn't have a lot of burn on the tires, not unlike Dameon Pierce, like in that, like, you know, round 3, round 4, day 3 area where he doesn't have a lot of tread on the tires, but you know, could find an easy outlet in the NFL and be a surprise. I think Zach Evans is definitely an intriguing name that doesn't have a lot of. He's never handled a big workload. But, you know, Dameon Pierce had a lot of the same issues when it comes to lack of playing time. So that quote negative is like, doesn't mean anything.
And honestly, you almost wonder if that's going to slowly become a positive, right? Because a lot of the discussion regarding running backs is they have a short shelf life, the wear and tear on the body. You take so many hits, so much contact. A back like Pierce, like Evans, who hasn't had that kind of consistent workload, who doesn't have the sort of mileage on the body, on the legs, the accumulation of hits over time, you almost wonder if that kind of player is going to be valued higher by NFL circles, because you might get a second contract out of him. You might get a third contract out of him because of it.
Yep. All right. That wraps it up. Mark, where can we find you, man? What do you got going on?
SBNation.com. At Mark Schofield on Twitter. We're doing the whole pointing thing, right? We're going to do a ton of draft coverage up and through the draft. Also, little announcement. We are covered out an F1 portion to SBNation.com. We are finally building that out. Really excited about that. That's going to go live, I think, April 24th, 25th, around there. So that's going to be fun too, because let's face it, look, there's more than football. We all love football. We can talk about it year round, and we do talk about it year round, but there's other stuff to talk about too, like F1, like NHL playoffs, and yes, the NBA playoffs too, my friend.
Oh man, I can't wait. I'm enjoying this nice and easy round one for the Sixers, emotional wise, like mentally wise, like it's
It's nice to ease into the playoffs. It's not like John Boy over at SB Nation has a tweet that he put out in 2014, which got retweeted tonight because we're recording this first round of the NHL playoffs kicks off tonight, where he says, "Why watch overtime playoff hockey when you can simply snort cocaine and ride a motorcycle out of a helicopter?" Like, NBA game one, round one is kind of nice. NHL, look, I'm a Bruins fan, President's Cup and all that stuff, but you run into one hot goalie and suddenly you're on the outside looking in. So playoff hockey is going to do a number on my cardiovascular system.
Yeah.
Next couple weeks.
Yeah, Sixers Celtics is going to be a blast, but there is nothing better than NHL playoffs. Nothing.
It's absolutely nothing. It's just a completely different level. I mean, you could just watch a red, like tonight, I'll be glued to the Edmonton game late night and just like wired. It's like I won't need to drink caffeine for the next month or so.
Yep. Bet on the Oilers. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, man, the Oilers are good.
Yes, sir. All right. That is Mark Schofield. Again, give him a follow on Twitter. You'll thank me later. At Mark Schofield. I am Dibs. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe. Comment, did we get anything right? Did we get anything wrong? Who's your favorite running back prospect? Let us know down in that comment section below. We'll see you in a few days breaking down the safeties. For Mark, for myself, stay awesome, everyone.